Well, it's Christmas Eve here at SAC TV, and I just want to look back on the year and point out some highlights. It was SAC TV's first year, 2012, and it had lots of great interviews. That was the pretty much the foundation of SAC TV throughout the year. Was a collection of interviews. Some were from 10 years ago. Some were recent, as in this year, and those were really fun to make, and I learned a lot from those interviews. For example, Dann Shively, back in February, did a series of interviews, and he was the reporter from the air for television for many years here in town at KCRA, and he did it in radio as well. And we talked about how radio and TV have changed over the years. We also talked with Dave Barton. We did a series of interviews about the Sacramento scene and how he contributed as a pop music critic for the Sacramento Bee. I also talked with several radio people of the past, such as Chris Collins of the FM 102 Morning Zoo, along with Killer B, who also was part of the Morning Zoo. And also talked with Johnny Hyde, who was the program director of Croy back in its heyday in the late 60s, early 70s, and he explained how Croy had its own unique regional, authentic sound, and it didn't copy other stations around the country, because around that time in the 60s and 70s is when you had a lot of consultants starting to duplicate stations everywhere. And he basically told us that Croy was very unique for its time and didn't copy the national picture. Also, William Burg, who has been an author here in town about Sacramento history. We did a series of interviews about local entertainment history, and he talked about downtown nightclubs over the years and which eras had the best entertainment. I also met with Eric Denio, and we talked about the history of Denio's auction out in Roseville, and it's Northern California's biggest flea market. So that was interesting to learn about the history, which started in the late 1940s, how a family business has survived all these years and is still going strong during a recession. KZAP had a reunion on KDVS, the Davis station, the UC Davis station, and Jeff Hughson was the guy who put it together. He was the original music director for KZAP back in 1968 when they first signed on. And he was with a friend named Mark, who's making a movie, kind of a documentary about KZAP and all the other free-form radio stations that were going on during that time, late 60s, early 70s. And so I was interviewed for that as well while I was there at KDVS. And that was a great video. I enjoyed putting that together. Freeform radio survives. And every now and then I'll write a song for one of these videos, and that was one that I enjoyed creating a song for, because I really believe that freeform radio is the best radio. So that's why KZAP keeps popping up in these history projects that we do here at SAC TV. Another great guest I interviewed was Michelle Jennae of the Indie Times. She put together her own independent website that does really well, that feeds the independent community with lots of interesting news that you can't get anywhere else. She is devoted to music, and so she has a lot of tips on how you can promote yourself through social networks. social media. So that's theindytimes.com. And I interviewed several artists who I've come to know and like very much. And some of those artists include Ken Koenig, who did an acoustic performance for us. So did Becca Danielson and Jay Shaner and Jeffrey Wynn Prince of the Kimberly Trip. We all did interviews the past year on SAC TV. So those were some of the fun things we did looking back. And I can only imagine that things will continue to get more fun in 2013.